Is pain a choice? To what degree is pain a choice? Pain is to some extent physical and therefore involuntary. But if you ask a boxer if his life is terrible, oftentimes he'll say, no, my life is pretty good. I play a sport at the top level, a sport that I love, you know, and I've got some good things going on in my life and I can't really complain. Whereas another person who endures the same level of pain, you know, sort of getting punched in the face on a daily basis, or maybe not a daily basis, but frequently, another person might say, this is terrible, this is horrible. And so in that case, the physical pain never necessarily feels good, although some fighters actually probably do enjoy the pain to an extent. But the pain is never necessarily the good thing in itself. But the way that we conceive of the pain, the way that we think about the pain, and our expectation for pain is going to change our interpretation of it and our evaluation of our life. Do we live a good life? If you're a boxer and you're at the top of your game and you know you occasionally get punched in the face, then you could live a good life. But if you're not a boxer and you get punched in the face, maybe that was humiliating, that was debasing, that was abusive, that was a physical representation of your powerlessness, and you will relive that punch in the face not just once but many times, perhaps on a daily basis. You'll have PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, where you'll constantly think about being punched in the face and how terrible it was. It's the same stimulus, the same physical stimulus, but interpreted in a radically different way that results in very different pain. And I would suggest that most of us are not on a daily basis dealing with physical pain. Some people who have diseases, cancer, fibromyalgia, I don't know. Some people may be dealing with physical pain on a daily basis, and that in itself is a slightly different scenario, although I would suggest that there are some people who do have cancer, who do have fibromyalgia, who do have significant pain, who can overcome that physical pain. I think the human body's ability to adapt to physical pain is amazing. I mean, of course, we have a number of drugs that can deal with pain, but I think that the human mind has an incredible regulatory ability to change the way that it perceives pain. If you expect every day to experience pain under a certain circumstance, that pain is perceived very differently than if it's unexpected, spontaneous. So if you have it, part of your job is you have to endure pain, or part of your workout involves a certain degree of discomfort or pain, that's much more tolerable if you're used to it, if you're expecting it, than if it's this unexpected, you know, surprise. So our expectations, our mental expectations of physical pain significantly change our ability to cope with it, to adapt to it, and to feel that we're living a good life. And I think this is the same for any kind of mental pain, emotional pain. I think much of the pain that we feel is reflexive. I think much of the pain that we feel is reflective, introspective, and after the fact analysis of a perceived sense of loss, or a perceived sense of inadequacy, or a perceived sense of low self-esteem, or because I don't have X, Y, and Z, or because this happens to me, because I'm treated this way, this means something about me. If people treat me badly, if people ignore me, they make fun of me, they abuse me, whatever they do, spit out the seeds. Whatever they do, we have to ask, what does that mean about us? If someone hurts us, what does that mean? Does that mean we were powerless? Does that mean they didn't respect us and therefore we're not worthy of respect? I think oftentimes people who are put through trauma or abuse, implicitly, there's a why. You know, in the same way we ask, why are we here? Why is the universe here? What's the purpose of this? We ask the same thing about trauma and pain. We say, well, why was I abandoned? Why was I made fun of? Why was I hurt? Why was I disrespected? Why was I ignored? Why was I treated badly? And the implicit answer always lurking in our minds is, I was treated badly because I deserve to be treated badly. And if I deserve to be treated badly, I'm somehow inadequate. I'm a bad person in myself. And so we externalize that which is external and we carry it with us like an anchor, like a weight. And that is very heavy. And that is very difficult to deal with. And I think that is, in the iceberg analysis, that is 90% or more of the pain and suffering that we feel. Has very little to do with some kind of immediate physical stimulus, but it really has more to do with our analysis, our perception, our story. So we could say that pain is a state of mind, being in pain, being anxious, being fearful, being depressed, being unhappy. These are states that we can enter and we can leave those states, but we can get stuck in these states and we have to ask ourselves, I think, what's the story that created the state? Besides the immediate, okay, you got punched in the face, it's painful, that's involuntary. But outside of that limited range of physical pain, everything that happens to you, everything that you experience has a story attached to it. And maybe that story is true. I'm not here to tell you that you're wrong, you're invalid. Oh, just get over it. Just think different, man. It's a mindset. I'm not really saying that at this point. All I'm saying is that there's a story, and it could be a true story, and it could be a false story. And if it's a true story, then maybe there's nothing you can do. If it's a false story, that's a different matter. But what if there's some subjectivity in here? The subjectivity of pain. What if you have a choice? What if you had a choice between two different stories and they were both equally true? That is, no one could tell you which one is true. If you said, well, I was abused, I was hurt, I was abandoned, I was ignored, those are all maybe true facts, right? But then how do you choose to interpret them? What story, what meaning do you assign to them? What's the mythology of your life? And you could say, well, the meaning is, I'm alone, I'm insufficient, I'm bad, I'm weak, I don't have what it takes, I'm not attractive to people, I'm not liked by people, people don't want to be my friend, people don't want to treat me well, people want to treat me badly because I deserve to be treated badly. And maybe for some people that's true. Maybe if you have some kind of physical, mental, moral deformity, maybe if there's something deeply wrong with you, maybe if you're mentally ill, maybe people legitimately don't like you on that basis and they're going to treat you badly. And that's just the way it is. Maybe. Or maybe the behaviors of other people really have no reflection on you whatsoever. I think about this in terms of political issues, like when people bring up racial disparities in crime. And they're saying, oh, this is really important. How can you ignore this issue? This is such an important issue. And I think for those people, when they bring that up, it's less about actually saving lives or reducing property damage or something like that, reducing trauma. Because I think there are much better ways to do that. And statistically, most crime is intraracial. So if you're concerned with the absolute numbers, that'd be one thing. But they're not actually concerned with that for the reason that they view everything through the lens of cuckoldry, that if there's a foreign group that attacks my group and I don't defend it and I don't call it out on this intergroup competition level, that means I'm a weak person. I'm a weak man. I'm a liberal, whatever. And so really they're not so much worried about what other groups of people are doing necessarily, but they're worried about what their lack of action says about them. That if they refuse to be brutally honest about this and speak the truth about the matter, if they didn't do that, then they would be a cuck, and they would be, it would reflect bad on them. And so that's their story. Their story is, if I don't call out this egregious injustice, that means I'm a weak person or I'm a dishonest person. And so what that means to me is, it's not the actions, it's not the crime itself that is causing the pain, but it's the interpretation that if I don't respond to this, if I don't do something about this, that means I'm a weak person. And I think a lot of conflicts operate in this way. Like, if someone calls you a mean name or disrespects you or ignores you or something, do you feel like you have to push back or punch back? I was discussing with someone the issue of infidelity and how many men throughout history, and maybe for some kind of social Darwinist evolutionary reason, have been violent toward those who are unfaithful, right? You catch somebody in bed with somebody else and you go O.J. Simpson mode, right? And so, there's two ways of looking at that. I think there's the way of looking, and of course it's different now than it was in previous societies or whatever, and different standards of law and so on. And different people are going to have, some people are just going to say, well, yeah, of course, look at Islamic law and honor killings, that of course if a woman dishonors her family, she should be put to death. That is, there's a certain Sharia interpretation there that some people would say, oh, well, that's what medieval Christians did. There's also evidence to support the idea that medieval Christians were much more relaxed in their sexual attitudes than we are today. And I know that sounds crazy, but what I mean by that is today, with consent ideology, sexual ideology, everything's categorized. All sexuality must be within the framework of strict black and white binomial nomenclature. It must be scientific. It must be puritanical. Any exceptions to these rules, any intolerance, any deviation from what is now the established norm as opposed to 50 years ago is, witch hunted. Whereas in medieval Europe, I think there is evidence to support the idea that people were not exactly adhering to the Christian concept of celibacy as 100% as we expect them to. Now, statistically, I think probably there is an argument to be made that the fact that you look at the Amish community, for example, and they are probably just, having premarital relations and then getting married in a shotgun wedding style thing. And that was the norm, right? I don't want to be too outlandish here. That's probably what was happening. But in any case, concerning the question of infidelity and violence, the O.J. Simpson case, is it justified for a man to lash out in violence or in murder? And of course there's cultural differences and questions, but to me, the question is, what is the pain? I'm not really going to answer the question whether it's right or wrong, because people can make up their minds. But my question is, what is the actual locus of violence? It's not the fact that the infidelity has caused some kind of continuing problem, because you could just get divorced, or you could just banish the woman, or, you know, why that anger? Why traditionally do we have this concept, even up to the present day, that if a woman is unfaithful, even a man sometimes, but we're using the O.J. Simpson case, why was O.J. Simpson so mad and so violent? I guess I'm taking the revisionist view on the O.J. Simpson case. I don't believe the mainstream narrative. I don't believe the United States government, you know, federal court or state court, however that was. I don't believe the official judicial response on the O.J. Simpson case. I don't think he was not guilty, right? But anyway, why did he do it? He didn't do it because it was physically painful. He didn't do it because it was mechanically necessary or legally necessary. I think he did it fundamentally because in that moment, the meaning of that event formed a story for him that if he didn't take some kind of action, if he didn't get some kind of revenge, if he didn't assert himself in the most primitive, masculine, violent way possible, he would be a cuck. He would be a dude who got cheated on, and he would be a loser. He would be emasculated. He would be a beta male. And so animals do this as well. You know, lions in the animal kingdom will kill the children of other lions. You know, that's even more extreme. But again, I'm not saying there's not some kind of evolutionary psychology basis for all of this. I'm not saying that it's untrue or unlogical or bad or whatever. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying that in the moment that O.J. Simpson was feeling those emotions, the locus of those feelings and the why of those feelings had really nothing to do with Nicole Simpson, his wife. It had everything to do with him and how he felt low and how he felt disrespected. And what would that mean about me if I allow myself to be disrespected? That would mean I'm weak. And if I'm weak, that means I'm worthless. And if I'm worthless, life is not worth living. And so what do I need to do here? I need to take extreme action to change this story. So now the story is, I'm a violent criminal, I'm a criminal mastermind, I got away with it, I showed her, you know, now she's 6 feet under, he's 6 feet under, I took charge, I'm the man, I'm a force to be reckoned with. No one will mistake me for a cuck, no one will mistake me for a beta male, I'm the alpha, I'm strong. So he wanted to change that story because of what it said about him, not what it said about her. He didn't care about her in that moment. He cared about himself. He cared about, what does this say about me? This person has wronged me. Okay, whatever. What does that say about me? Now, another person might say that and see, wow, I guess I'm getting a divorce. This woman is, you know, obviously worthless, but I'm not going to risk life in prison for this woman. I'm just going to walk away. Because to that man who would make that decision, he's saying, that event, that behavior of that other person doesn't determine who I am. It doesn't determine that I'm a good person, bad person, strong person, weak person. Really, that's on them. They're going to have to deal with that for the rest of their life. And anybody who decides to be with them, well, they're a cheater. They're going to have to, you know, contend with that. But that has nothing to do with me. And I'm not going to incur consequence. I'm not going to go through a legal battle over this. I'm just going to walk away. There's another, and again, look, we can all have disagreements and say, well, you know, it would have been a legal battle in the divorce and so on. Maybe I'm getting too far afield of the original question, which is just that the bad things that happen in our lives are not bad because of those people out there. They're not bad because of the actions that they did to us. They're bad because of how they make us identify in ourselves. That our story of our pain, of our trauma, whether it's my story is I don't have friends and therefore I'm a bad person, or I'm not successful, therefore I'm a loser. I don't have money, therefore I'm weak. I don't have power, therefore I'm worthless. right? Our story is the way that we take the facts about our life, the circumstances of our life, the obstacles in our life. We take those things, we assemble them together into a meaning that we then use to define a quality that consumes our identity. So, this happened, therefore I am this. And if that's bad, that's going to cause us pain, that's going to cause us suffering, that's going to be debilitating. And so what I'm saying is we have to be conscious of this process. And we have to be conscious of the degree of choice that we have in this process. We have to wonder, or at least question and be skeptical, do we have the ability to make some kind of choice in this arena? Do we have the ability to change our story, to change the meaning? If someone does something bad to us, or we feel disempowered, or we don't have the money we'd like to have, we don't have the material things, what does that mean? Does that mean we're a bad, worthless person? Or does that mean we have a challenge ahead of us? Does that mean we've got work to do? Does that mean life is exciting, life is an adventure because, we've got so much room to grow, we've got so much to learn? How do we take that? What kind of story do we make? And how is our identity shaped by that story? And do we have any agency whatsoever? Some people want to feel that they have no agency because in having zero agency, they gain certainty about their life. And they say, look, my life is terrible. I don't have any control. It is what it is. Case closed, end of story. And I'm just going to live the rest of my life in this paradigm. And if that's a good paradigm, then good on you. But if it's not, why is a person stuck in a mental frame of, I have a bad relationship, but I can't get in a better relationship? Or my relationship is bad, but I couldn't improve it. It's not up to me. Or I don't like my job, but I couldn't change my job. I couldn't start a business. That's too hard. I'm not smart enough. I don't work hard enough. Whatever. Any problem that we encounter, we have to ask ourselves, why are we so certain about the things that we believe? Are we certain because they're true? Maybe they are. Like, I'm pretty certain I couldn't jump off the Empire State Building and start flying. I'm pretty certain of that. But maybe if I changed my resources, if I was a little bit resourceful, if I got a hang glider or a parachute, maybe I could sort of fly. So, in some cases, our story is basically true and maybe it's immutable, but shouldn't we have a bit of skepticism in our certainty, and shouldn't we understand the biases that we have in that certainty? That the certainty that we have about our life is sometimes self-serving, because it's easier to be certain that you have a bad life and to say, I'm just going to accept it. I'm just going to accept I have a bad life. I'm just going to accept I'm a mediocre person. I'm just going to accept that, I talked to somebody the other day and he said to me, I'm addicted to the internet, and my goal in life is to earn enough money that I can live off grid so that, I don't have to do that anymore. I said, have you tried camping? He said, nah, I don't have a car. I said, well, you could take a bus. And he said, no, the buses here, it's terrible. The buses there, the scheduling's all messed up. They're slow. Sometimes they're late or whatever. It's like, so you're setting up a paradigm where either in 10 years' time you're going to have enough money to change your life, and you're deferring that to the future in this black and white way. And then when I try to simplify it, break it down and say, okay, well, maybe you can't get the entire off-grid experience and say you own this property and whatever, have your life perfect, but maybe don't make the perfect the enemy of the good. Maybe just go camping. No. Buses. Can't get around that. Couldn't get an Uber, couldn't get a taxi, couldn't walk, couldn't ride a bike, couldn't buy a scooter, couldn't get a motorcycle or a moped. No, the buses are terrible, end of story. What does that say to me? There's a lack of resourcefulness. It's not that there's an objective truth behind that story, because think about that. If I say, well, you don't have a car, what about a bus? That's not me saying it's a Pascal's wager, whether it's either a car or a bus. That's me saying, here's one idea, what about the bus? And then we go to the next idea. But instead of that, it was just an immediate, bus isn't going to work. So that's not to criticize that person or that individual, and I'm glad they shared that story with me, because it made me think about my own life. It made me think about the obstacles that I have and the story that I have about those obstacles. Relationships that I want to improve. Relationships that I want to grow. Relationships that I don't have that I wish I had. The proximity to those people. The changes in myself that I think are necessary. The development of confidence. So many things that I want in my life. So many things that I don't have. What's my story about them? You know, and I think a lot of times I simply say, I can't. You know, well, why don't you do this? Why don't you, oh, I can't. That's a story that gives me certainty, that allows me to stay where I am, because even though it's not where I want to be, it's still comfortable. I'm comfortable in the certainty that these are my limitations. And stepping outside of my own limitations would make me uncomfortable. And therefore, I don't want to do it. But is that the right way to live your life? Is that the right way for me to live my life? I'm skeptical. And what I'm grateful for is the opportunity to speak to people who share their story with me, right or wrong, true or false. The people who share their story with me, because what that gives to me is it gives me perspective on my story. It gives me the perspective to say, you know, is that true? Is that false? And if so, what parallels exist in my own thinking? Because sometimes it's easier for me to be objective with somebody else than with myself, right? It's easier for me to be, you know, let's say you have a fear of heights. I have a slight fear of heights. It's not the worst. I have a fear of heights. Maybe some of you saw when I was on the mountaintop, right? So I have a fear of heights, and someone who doesn't, they might look at me and say, what's the big deal, bro? Just come up on the mountain, you know? And really, they're really sucking me today. You know, but for me, that would be more, I mean, I'm actually feeling the fear. I'm feeling the discomfort. So when I see somebody else dealing with the fear of snakes or spiders, I mean, I can just put a spider on my face, no problem. You know, I see someone dealing with that, I'm like, that's kind of silly. That's irrational. That's based on pure emotion. There's no basis in reality to that fear. That spider's not dangerous. That's just an example. But it puts my own fears in perspective. It puts my own story in perspective and makes me say, you know, maybe the story that I have about why things have to, oh, I can't do this, I can't do that, it brings it into question, it brings it into doubt. And I think, you know, I legitimately have these feelings. I have feelings of discomfort. I have feelings of fear. I have a sense of loss about things that might happen in the past based on things that, or excuse me, things that might happen in the future based on things that did happen in the past. But what if I could push beyond it? What if I could just kind of make that leap of faith and say, I know it's uncomfortable, I know I don't want to do it, but what if I did it anyway? What would be on the other side? What would happen if I pushed myself into discomfort and came out on the other side? Would it feel better? Would it be a better life? And if it would, what's holding me back? What is this fear serving? Is my fear serving me? Is it protecting me? Or is it imprisoning me? Is it harming me? What do I have to lose? What do I really have to lose? We use this term irrational fear. We can use rational minds and we can say, yeah, I should do this, I should do that. How often do we actually do it? I think the difference between the mediocre people and the amazing people in this world really comes down to the quantity and the frequency in which you're able to push through something that makes you irrationally uncomfortable, irrationally fearful, because you have some kind of rational knowledge that it's the right thing to do, it's the good thing to do. That's all for today. Thanks for listening. Follow me on Twitter at Jokull, Jokkull. Like, comment, share, subscribe, promote the channel. Love you all. Thank you very much. Bye-bye. Nice.
Subscribe. Very good.
Nice. Beautiful.
Very good.
Beautiful. You're going to love it. If you love autism, you're going to love my channel. Okay, great.
All right.